1. The Security Guard's Last Round by Derek Martinez. The clock read 3:17 a.m. when Marcus began what would be his final security round at the Meridian office complex. He'd been working nights for 6 months, and nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for what was waiting in the building's depths that Tuesday morning. Marcus had always prided himself on being thorough. Every door, every window, every corner of the 12-floor building got checked during his hourly rounds. But lately, something felt different. Tenants had been complaining about strange noises coming from the 7th floor, a floor that had been vacant for over 8 months. As Marcus stepped off the elevator onto the 7th floor, his flashlight beam cut through the darkness. The familiar hum of the building seemed louder here, almost aggressive. He'd requested maintenance to check the HVAC system multiple times, but they kept insisting everything was normal. Just another round, he whispered to himself, a habit he'd developed to break the oppressive silence. But tonight, the silence was broken by something else. A soft tapping sound echoed from somewhere deep within the maze of empty cubicles. Marcus froze, listening. Tap, tap, tap. Rhythmic, deliberate, like someone typing on a keyboard. His radio crackled. Unit 12, this is dispatch. We've received another noise complaint from the 7th floor. Resident in the adjacent building reported seeing lights moving around up there. Marcus pressed the radio button, his voice steadier than he felt. Following the sound, Marcus navigated through the cubicle maze. The tapping grew louder, more insistent. As he rounded a corner, his flashlight illuminated something that made his blood turn cold. An office chair spinning slowly in front of a computer that had been disconnected for months. The tapping stopped. Marcus approached cautiously, his hand instinctively moving to the pepper spray on his belt. As he got closer, he noticed something that made his throat tighten. The computer screen was on, displaying lines of text that seemed to scroll endlessly upward. But the power cable lay disconnected on the floor. He leaned in to read the text, and what he saw made him stumble backward. The screen showed a continuous loop of the same message. Marcus, you're not alone up here. Turn around. His heart hammering, Marcus spun around, his flashlight sweeping wildly across the empty cubicles. Nothing, just shadows and silence. But then he heard it, his own voice, coming from somewhere behind him. Just another round, the voice whispered, mimicking his earlier words perfectly. Marcus didn't wait to investigate further. He ran, his footsteps echoing through the empty floor as he made for the stairwell. Behind him, he could hear the sound of multiple keyboards typing in perfect synchronization, creating a mechanical symphony that seemed to follow his retreat. He never returned to finish his shift. When the day security guard arrived the next morning, he found Marcus's flashlight and radio abandoned on the 7th floor. Story 2: The Nurse's Final Patient by Amanda Chen. Sarah had been working the graveyard shift in the ICU for 3 years, but nothing could have prepared her for the patient in room 237. It was 2:30 a.m. on a quiet October night when the ambulance brought him in. A man in his 60s, found unconscious in his apartment with no identification and no emergency contacts. What disturbed Sarah wasn't his condition, though that was strange enough. Despite being in a coma, his vitals were perfect. Too perfect. His heart rate never fluctuated. His blood pressure remained exactly 120 per 80, and his breathing was mechanically precise. 18 breaths per minute, every minute, without fail. Dr. Peterson had run every test imaginable. Brain scans, blood work, neurological assessments. Everything came back normal. More than normal. The man's body functioned like a machine, operating at peak efficiency. "His name is Thomas," Sarah whispered to herself as she checked his chart for the dozenth time that night. They'd finally identified him through dental records. Thomas Hartwell, a retired watchmaker who lived alone. But what really unsettled Sarah were his eyes. Even in his unconscious state, they would occasionally flutter open, revealing pale blue irises that seemed to track movement around the room. Dr. Peterson insisted it was just reflexive eye movement, common in coma patients. Sarah wasn't convinced. At 3:15 a.m., while updating Thomas's chart, Sarah heard something that made her pen freeze mid-sentence. A faint ticking sound, rhythmic and precise, was coming from his room. She looked up at the wall clock. It had stopped at 11:47. She entered room 237 cautiously. The ticking was definitely coming from Thomas. As she approached his bedside, the sound grew clearer. It wasn't coming from around him. It was coming from inside him. "Thomas?" Sarah whispered, checking his pulse manually. His heartbeat didn't match the ticking sound. The ticking was faster, more mechanical, like the internal workings of an intricate clock. His eyes snapped open. Sarah gasped and stepped back, but Thomas's pale blue eyes focused directly on her, with an alertness that shouldn't have been possible. His lips moved slightly, and when he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, but crystal clear. "Time's up, Sarah." "How do you know my name?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I know everyone's time," he replied, his eyes never blinking. "Yours ends in 14 minutes. Sarah's hands shook as she reached for the call button, but Thomas continued speaking. "Don't bother calling Dr. Peterson. His time ended 2 minutes ago." Paralyzed by fear, Sarah looked out into the hallway. Dr. Peterson lay collapsed outside room 235, his stethoscope scattered beside him. The cardiac monitor in Thomas's room began displaying a countdown timer. 13:47, 13:46, 13:45. "You can run," Thomas said, his voice growing stronger. "But you can't outrun time." Sarah ran. As she sprinted down the seemingly endless hospital corridor, she could hear the ticking sound growing louder, echoing from every room, every wall, every corner of the building. The countdown on every monitor she passed showed her remaining time decreasing with mechanical precision. When security found her the next morning, Sarah was standing perfectly still in the hospital parking lot, staring at her watch. She couldn't explain what had happened, but she never worked another night shift. Thomas Hartwell's room was found empty, with no record of his discharge and no explanation for his disappearance. The only trace he left behind was every clock in the hospital, all stopped at 3:29 a.m. Story 3: The Factory Worker's Last Shift, by Robert Thompson. Jake had been working the overnight maintenance shift at Blackwood Manufacturing for 7 years. In all that time, he'd never encountered anything he couldn't fix, couldn't explain, or couldn't handle. But his final shift would test limits he didn't know existed. The factory produced automotive parts during the day, but at night, it became Jake's domain. Just him, the machines, and the rhythmic hum of equipment running cleaning cycles. He preferred it this way. No supervisors, no co-workers, just honest work in peaceful solitude. But tonight felt different from the moment he clocked in. The usual mechanical symphony seemed off-key, discordant. Machines that should have been running their standard overnight maintenance cycles were producing sounds Jake had never heard before. Probably just needs calibration, he muttered, checking his maintenance log. Line 7 was first on his list, the massive stamping press that had been acting up lately. As Jake approached Line 7, the stamping press was running at full speed, something that should have been impossible during maintenance hours. The massive machine hammered away with violent precision, but instead of shaping metal, it seemed to be working on nothing but air. Jake pulled out his radio. "Control, this is Jake. Line 7 is running hot. I thought it was scheduled for downtime tonight." Static answered him. He tried again, but his radio remained dead. The stamping press suddenly stopped, and in the resulting silence, Jake heard something that made his skin crawl. Whispered voices seemed to echo from inside the machinery. Dozens of them, all speaking in unison, all saying the same thing. "Join us, Jake. Complete the line." He stumbled backward, his flashlight beam sweeping across the factory floor. That's when he noticed them. Wet footprints leading from each machine toward the center of the factory floor. Jake's hands trembled as he followed the footprints. Each set was different. Work boots, sneakers, dress shoes, as if dozens of people had walked this same path over many years. At the center of the circle, the drain pulsed with a faint, organic rhythm, like a heartbeat. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Join us, Jake. Complete the line." Looking around desperately, Jake realized the voices were coming from the machines themselves. Each piece of equipment housed the voice of someone who had worked here before. Night shift workers who had simply vanished without explanation over the decades. His predecessor, Mike Chen, who'd supposedly quit to move to Florida. His voice echoed from the welding station. "The line must be completed, Jake." Sandra Williams, who'd worked packaging before Jake arrived. Her voice emanated from the conveyor system. "Your shift is ending, Jake. Our shift is beginning." The factory floor began to vibrate, and every machine roared to life simultaneously. Conveyor belts moved without products. Robotic arms grasped at empty air, and the stamping press resumed its violent rhythm. But now, Jake understood what they were trying to create. They were forging a space for him in their eternal night shift. He ran for the exit as the machinery seemed to lean inward, trying to block his path. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits. Steam hissed from overpressurized pipes, and the whispers became a roar of mechanical voices, all calling his name. Jake burst through the emergency exit just as every machine in the factory fell silent at once. Security cameras showed Jake entering the building, but never leaving. His car remained in the parking lot for 3 days before being towed. The factory was shut down permanently after investigators found dozens of personal items belonging to missing night shift workers, dating back 40 years. Local residents still report hearing the sound of machinery running at Blackwood Manufacturing late at night, along with whispers calling for someone to complete the line. Which story scared you the most? Was it Marcus trapped forever in his security rounds? Sarah facing the clockwork patient who knew everyone's time? Or Jake being recruited by the factory's ghostly night shift? Comment below and let me know which one gave you chills. Don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying true stories that will keep you up at night. Sweet dreams, if you can manage them.